Welcome back to Artistic Differences. We are a monthly cinema club and an interview for films that demand. We're a podcast that makes demands.
We like that.
Just a demanding.
We demand.
We demand you listen. We have a lot of demands. No, we watch films that demand discussion, deeper discussion. And I'm Christopher Allen. I'm here with our collaborator, Cíntia Gil.
Hi, Christopher.
Hello.
Hello.
We explored some dogmas today, didn't we, Cíntia?
Yeah. Usually I say I love you in the beginning of this podcast because I love making love declarations all the time because I'm a bitter person and I need to bring love to my interactions with people. But actually, after refusing so many dogmas, she came up with a much better one, which is love and happiness.
For me, it's like mandatory to find a way to get related with movies and cinema in a way we can find somehow happiness or some kind of love.
But not in a softer, hippie way.
No, actually.
Somehow containing both grief and doubt and challenges.
I want to make a warning right now.
Oh, this
podcast.
We have to make this podcast.
Yes, this is very important.
This trigger warning.
This conversation with Maria Aparicio is not only about her film, it's actually a wonderful conversation for practical life. If you want to think about life...
It's the philosophy of the everyday.
Yes, attitudes.
You'll be better afterwards. You'll thank yourself.
I do.
Well, I thank you too. And that's how we start, with thanks and love and happiness. We do this each Saturday of the month with Artistic Differences, and we bring a curious group together to have a shared moment of focus and attention and exchange.
And so we discuss the film program, and we ask questions without the filmmaker's presence.
No, we don't ask them to be there. They get to be here today when the ideas have sort of been processed, and we bring them back through some questions in today's conversation, in this interview. And this month, we're extremely excited to let you into a conversation with Maria Aparicio and her astonishing film, Undefined Things, which did circulate around many definitions. In fact, Cíntia defined the filmmaker as a Borgesian Marxist at one point, but...
You defined the Borgesian. The Borgesian is your doing.
It's true. I've coined that term. No. It's a really beautiful conversation with Maria Aparicio, who is calling in from Córdoba in Argentina. Córdoba.
Yep.
And we heard a little bit of Córdoba's sounds in the background, not too many, but if you're hearing some horns and
Córdoba has some
voices.
Motorbikes.
She was on a motorbike, actually, as we spoke.
She was
in traffic.
She was in a beautiful living room with wonderful lights.
Yeah, her film is gorgeous and astonishing, almost as astonishing as her living room. We watched this with our cinema club about a couple weekends ago. We meet every first Saturday of the month.
First we share the film, and then we have a discussion with international people who come from all
Imagine
over
that.
the
International
planets.
people talking to each other.
Not yet from Mars.
But we're open to it.
We have wonderful and deep and engaging moments of shared focus, attention, and exchange.
And we take those questions and ideas that come up in that interview and we mull over them and reiterate them and bring them back to the filmmaker through this conversation. If you haven't seen Maria's film, I don't think it has played theatrically in the US or been a part of a festival.
Which is not a great thing to say about American festivals, I must say.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible because the film is gorgeous.
Shameful.
It did, however, win the cinema.
I'm shaming all American festivals right now.
Right now. Don't hold back, Cíntia, please.
No, I don't.
We were privileged to be able to watch it, and it did win the Cinema Tropical Award, I guess for their main award. So it has been recognized in some ways. But
which speaks of the wonderful work that Cinema Tropical does in the US.
Absolutely.
Festivals, look at Cinema Tropical.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at it and learn.
Absolutely. This film will be part of our membership online. You can watch it on the Union Docs membership hub. I would say watch it first if you can, and then come to this conversation. You'll find it at membership.uniondocs.org, and we should say thanks.
Yeah, to say thanks to our members.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's because of you all that we can run the cinema club. We hope you join us on the first Saturday of every month. And if you haven't joined yet, then you can afford to contribute. Please consider joining at membership.uniondocs.org.
And if you come to the online discussions, there are friendships being made.
Absolutely.
In those discussions. It's quite
We've
deep.
got a crew. We've got a crew here. And we're always happy to see them. And you'll hear some of their voices right now.
So one of the things that made me think was there's a kind of hybridity in this movie that we could talk about as something that's taking interiority and exteriority and making it hybrid.
When I go to a film, I'm not relaxing. I'm seeing cinema.
Every film is going to be a mourning about the passing of human life.
The worst thing is to be indifferent to what you are going to touch, because you are going to make a bad film.
They're this object that is kind of a symbol of transition, and people give you flowers out of congratulations or in mourning, like on your wedding day or at your funeral. And it's interesting that we have the same kind of symbol for all of these very different kind of opposite moments in life.
So how should we introduce Maria?
So Maria is a filmmaker from Córdoba, Argentina. She was born in 1992. So
Makes
she
her
can still say when she was born, basically.
Yeah, it's part of the bio.
She can still do it.
Because you're wow.
Yeah, it's 1992. What was I smoking?
Okay.
What was I smoking?
Recognize. Yeah. So that's that. I wonder. We don't know how many more years her year of birth will stay in her bio, but at this point, it's still there.
It's still there. Maria, wonderful.
She's very wise for her age, I would say. And I found the conversation quite illuminating. And actually, she is a teacher of film as well.
Yeah. And I can imagine how wonderful it is to learn with her, because she's
to
both
be in her class would be
illuminating
great.
and generous and kind.
Sensitive.
She's very kind.
Yeah. How many films has she made?
She's made 3 films. The first film was in 2016, The Streets. Then she made About the Clouds in 2022, and now Undefined Things, that premiered, like the previous one, it premiered at Film Marseille in 2023.
With that, maybe we should jump into the conversation.
Absolutely. Hi.
Hello.
How are you, Maria?
Cíntia. Hello. I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good.
We were at the Cinema Tropical Awards when your film won.
Yes.
So everyone was applauding you.
I actually did that. We were being at a work.
Oh, really?
So
Wow.
when they sent the mail, it was like, wow, this is a surprise. Yeah. Because since I did in the US, I think it was good to won that award.
Yeah, they do a lot to support film from Latin America, and yeah, I think they have really good taste. We were happy that we already had this plan to. Cynthia had brought us your film also, and we had this plan to include you in Artistic Differences, and so we were especially excited.
That was a surprise for me too, because I feel very honored to be here talking with you. Union Docs for me is like a special thing. From here, it is like I don't know, the filmmakers you work with or the other people that was here in this Artistic Difference is people that I admire somehow. So
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Maria.
We did have a really nice chance to talk with our cinema club to discuss Undefined Things, and it was a really lovely conversation, and actually we had quite a number of editors
Yeah, it's true.
who were there. So it was very close to everyone's
Yeah,
experience.
and it was very beautiful because there was this, they felt understood, they felt seen.
Yeah.
Like suddenly
Yeah.
they were talking about their own emotions towards their work.
When I go to a film, I'm not relaxing. I'm seeing cinema. I'm thinking about cinema, and I'm thinking about my work.
for us, it was one of the main things while doing this film was to find a way to portray the job of an editor in a way that can be understood by anyone, people that don't know anything about the editor jobs. So I still wonder if we achieved that, because film editors always watch the film and it happened this that you are saying, that they felt understood. But I always have this question: what happened when someone who doesn't know anything about editing, what happened with those people with the film? So that's why it is very interesting in the film theater with the audience, because we have the chance to speak about this with the audience.
Do you think people have a misconception of what the job of an editor is?
No, I think that in the end it's not so difficult. Maybe we have this idea that is like a very complex thing. In the end, I think it's much more easier than we think. Being there, thinking about the images and wondering about what is the sense of putting this image before or after, and the time that passed through the images and the sound. It is quite strange when I mention this, but we try to find a way to put that in the film in a way that can be easily understood. But people that are not related to the job of an editor, they in the end feel connected to what is happening to Eva, apart from the editing thing, not only a film character dedicated to editing movies, but also like a woman that is somehow sad for a friend that is no longer there.
But I think Maria, even though I totally get what you mean when you talk about giving a sense of what is the labor of editing, I still feel that your film goes a bit further in actually reflecting about the cinema you want to put forward. Because, for example, that key conversation between her and Ramiro when he made the first cut and she's talking about not being general and he's talking about not being thematic and she's talking about not being general, and it's this table, it's this house, it's this person. It's addressing not just editing but a certain vision of cinema.
That was a risk, like a riesgo for us, because we didn't want to use the character to say exactly what we think about things. Actually, I don't know very well what I think about cinema, But in the end, yes, I think this idea that Eva has about a film about these people and not a film about blindness, this idea of going through the general to a singular thing.
Which is also what the film is doing, Maria, because the film is not about editing. It's about Eva and Ramiro and their friendship and the absence of the friend they lost, etc. It's somehow a comment on the film itself in a way, as an attitude.
Yes.
I don't know. I feel that your film has a lot of practical philosophy too in it,
Yes, great.
Yes, it actually starts with a very philosophical statement from Eva in her role as a professor, as a teacher in the university. And we have this direct to camera, really wonderfully articulate and poetic kind of thought process that she's introducing to us as the viewers and also the students in the room of an idea of what the archive functions for, sort of for humanity and how it relates to dreams. And I thought it's a really beautiful statement and a beautiful moment and way to begin the film. And it made me wonder if you had a teacher like this in your life.
That's a beautiful question. And it's a difficult thing for us because I am from Córdoba, which is where I am now, where the film was filmed. Córdoba is the second city from Argentina. Buenos Aires is like the big city of the country. Argentina is a very centralized country. Most of the people, when think about Argentina, think about Buenos Aires. But here in Córdoba, it is a big city. We have a public university. We have cinemas. We have libraries. We have museums. We have a lot of things going on here. But when you want to study cinema, it is a strange thing because the public university, it is like a great place because we don't pay anything if we want to study. Anyone can study.
Oh, wow.
I've never finished my studies in the university, but it was an important place for me, especially for the teachers. I had a great teacher that was so important for me that maybe you know him because it is Roger Cosa. So Roger, he is from Buenos Aires, but he lived so many years in Córdoba. He is here when he's not traveling around the world. He is here in Córdoba. He is a teacher in a seminario. It's like a workshop. He does in a film theater here.
He told me he's been doing that for like 20 years or something.
Yes.
Wow.
There is a group of people like from the very beginning in his classes. I live around the corner. I just walk one block and I am in that cinema. All the work he did here was very important. You know, Córdoba is like a very cinephile, una ciudad muy cinéfila, a very cinephile city. There is a group of people thinking about film critic and writing about movies, and I am very lucky to have a group of people near me that they work in a film magazine.
We were talking about that and how actually community is
Yes.
something very much present in the film, and we feel it, but also in your other films. Of course, you know, La Vida Útil, the magazine where Ramiro was so. But we were talking also about the actors because, of course, the reason why I was mentioning practical philosophy and not theoretical philosophy, it's not about that, but practical philosophy in your film, is because there is an attitude towards cinema that corresponds very much also to a practice of community. And so there's this collaboration with actors, like this constant collaboration with actors, like Eva in all your films. There's Pablo also, but there's also Ramiro who plays the assistant editor, but then he edits the film.
He's the actual editor, right?
He's the actual editor, exactly. And so we wonder if some of the conversations are not actually about the film. So there's something really beautiful going on around, not while making a film, thinking about cinema as an attitude and cinema as a way of being together and creating things together. We wanted to know more about that, Maria, because when I watch your films, I feel this is a Córdoba film.
I'm very happy that you mentioned that because for me is everything, the community somehow. I mean, I think that my school was this cinema, Hugo del Carril, the cinema that is around my house, around the corner. That cinema and the people there and the community that somehow was built around and around other cinemas here in Córdoba. I had to say too that there was some years ago like some public políticas públicas, like some found
Public policy.
Yes, that somehow allow that in a city that is not the main city of the country, people can develop somehow they work on cinema. You know, for me is so important that here in Córdoba there are good people working with microphones or sound recorders or editors or photographers. So I think there is like so many things that when you put them all together, there is like a very nice ecosystem here in Córdoba. For me, it's a great place to be. I don't know if I could find a way of making movies somewhere else because for me this feeling of being part of something is a very special thing. I don't know how to explain this better, but we work together in the films that we want to do. Sometimes we have a little money, sometimes we don't have anything. So community is everything for me. No podría haber hecho nada sola, you know.
I couldn't have done anything alone.
Yeah.
And the collaboration with your actors, because we call them actors, but
yes, they
are actors. But at the same time, what I mean is, at the same time, there is some sense of continuity between the different characters that they play, and there's something beyond. Of course, acting is a very big word, and it can mean many different things. So maybe my question is more like, what is an actor for you when you actually work with these friends? Because I imagine they are close people to you, or at least people you admire very much, and you work with them consistently, right?
Yes.
So these bodies and these ways of moving and these voices, etc., they are familiar to you. So what is an actor for you, and how do you see that within this community?
There is an Argentinian filmmaker, Ana Poliak, that says that there is no one that cannot be interesting, you know. No hay nadie que no sea interesante. Everything can be interesting somehow. But I have to think in my first movie that it was the name is Las Calles, the Streets. It was a film that we recorded when I was 21 when we made that movie. We were like a group of friends I met in the university. For most of us, it was like first feature film we did. We get together with Eva, this actress, Eva Bianco. She was already a great actress from our city. This is important for me to say because I was like a 21 young girl and she was already like a great actress. She, with a generosity, a huge generosity, she decided to go there and film with us. We didn't have any money, of course. It is kind of strange for me. Many years before I realized how lucky we were for having the chance of work with her. And from that moment, we always get together when we think about filming something. And I don't know, maybe the characters that I imagine, I always imagine Eva's face, but but
Now you
maybe,
can't escape.
yes. But for example, in my previous film, about the clouds, sobre las nubes, two of the four main protagonists of the films, they have never acted in their life. It was the first time acting. Oh. Following this idea of Ana Poliak, I think that anyone can be in front of the camera. I like to think about fiction in an experimental way, you know. Sometimes we think that fiction is like a script, very strict, with everything is already decided and you, the filmmaker, know everything you want to do from the very beginning of the writing. And I think that is the opposite. Fiction can also be a place to experiment, you know, to find a strange process of working and working with people that maybe they have never been in front of the camera, but can also be in the body of a character that maybe is not related to their own life, or maybe yes. I think that fiction also has that possibility, and I'd like to think the movies we did and we want to keep on doing in that way, you know, like in this connection between fiction and imagination together with a specific place and a specific time, which is Argentina, Córdoba, in this moment.
Is this time for your rant then now, Cynthia? This is we decided there would be a moment of polemic here.
Moment of polemic? No, because we were talking about your film in the Cine Club, and like I have this big battle that I've been losing for many years against the idea of hybrid films.
Yeah.
I hate the words.
Yeah. I hate it too, huh? I agree with you.
You join the party.
Yeah, no, but wait, because this gets worse.
Okay.
So the reason why I hate
tell us about your hatred, Cynthia, please.
Yeah, I will talk about my hatred.
Let's unpack your
hybrid
hatred
in general. So my problem with hybrid in general is two reasons. One, the more conceptual reason, is because I feel that mostly it's usually taken as in a very binary way. So basically, it's a very lazy way to categorize something that is by nature much more complex. So methodologies, the nature of images, etc. So it feels a sort of very flat way to talk about something that is much more lively. Mm-hmm. The second reason is because it feels like it became a marketing tool to make documentaries sexier or fiction more experimental, like looking or being sold as more experimental or sexier or whatever. So I kind of have this problem with the idea of hybrid. It doesn't mean that I don't like what they call hybrid films. It has nothing to do with the films.
Give us a negative example.
No, I can't.
Like not of a specific film, but not a specific film, but of the type of thing that you're reacting to.
Okay, so I was giving an example today when we were talking about this. So you're making a film about a garden, right? A documentary about a garden, and you're filming a garden, and you're in love with the garden, and you film the garden in whatever way you feel. And suddenly you put a fairy in the garden who tells a tale to the camera. And suddenly, just because you put a fairy in the garden, you call it a hybrid film.
Yeah.
For me, it's still a documentary, or it can be a fiction. But the fact that you have a fairy in the garden doesn't mean that you're not somehow making a film that responds or that has the matter of reality in it. And somehow your film came to me as a really wonderful of what hybridity actually can be. Because what I feel in your film is that this idea, and of course, I totally imagine that you did not think about theories of hybridity when you were making the film, Maria.
You're enlisting her in your war, actually. Now. You're bringing her into your army, and you don't know it. So don't feel pressure to be brainwashed.
No,
she sends you a T-shirt that says "Fairies in the Garden, get out."
I want to be in that army. I want to be.
Thank you, Maria. Next meeting in Córdoba.
Solidarity.
No, but basically what you were saying now, right? This idea of bringing together imagination,
Yes.
the desire of fiction, the movement that imagination permits, allows, and bringing that together with what reality gives you, right? And that interest, because it's not about what reality gives you only, it's about attention and interest. What is interesting, what you are actually interested in, and where do you put your attention, which is usually a huge problem because you see so many documentaries that have no attention in what they're filming. When you bring these two things together, what happens, and that's wonderful in your film, is that suddenly many kinds of hybridity happen. And the conversation with the Cine Club was wonderful, but that was a really great moment because suddenly people were discovering how hybridity can be so much more complex and so much more interesting and even about life and helps us create like new thoughts about our lives in cinema. So, for example, we were talking about how the images in your film, they change nature. A Super 8 image that can be a dream, but can also be the possibility of ever being with the characters of the film she's editing. Or there was a person in the Cine Club that was talking about how the more documentary images, footage of the people with blindness, how that made him think about feeling your face from the inside.
And how you create expression somehow from that.
The experience of your own face is from inside. And so you're not constantly checking yourself in the mirror. At least we didn't do that before cell phones. And so when you raise your eyebrows yourself, it's an experience of inside of your face doing that. So one of the things that made me think was there's a kind of hybridity in this movie that we could talk about, something that's taking interiority and exteriority and making it hybrid.
And so how your film was so much about changing this order of interiority and exteriority, how tears were so important in your film at the moment where she cries. So there was all these conversations about rethinking hybridity.
I think for me, cinema is like such a big thing, and I think somehow this world, like hybridity or documentary films or fiction film, it's like a way to simplify so much this complex and undefined and so strange thing that is cinema. You know, it's like taking out the prejuicio, the prejudice. You know,
Prejudice, yeah.
Yes. I've been in some places of documentary studies and that, and you know this idea of thinking on fiction as a conservative thing or as something that don't belongs to Latin American cinema, or you know, this idea of being close to reality means to reject the tools that were used in industrial cinema. For me, that is like losing the chance to redefine cinema, you know. And sometimes I also had this feeling that for Latin American filmmakers, what people expect or what's the cinema of the world expect from Latin American filmmakers is connection with reality and being close to politics problems.
The connection with the reality that is absolutely reduced to a sort of factual world.
Yeah, of
that is
course.
recognized from the outside. Because
Yes,
in
of
principle,
course.
dreams are as much reality as money.
Of course. And I think that, reality, politics, that is also like a huge, big, undefined, strange thing as
Yeah.
cinema. So I think that it is somehow related to what I said before about cinephilia, the cinephile. It is said like that?
Cinephilia.
Cinephilia.
Cinephilia exists, no, Christopher?
I
Yeah,
don't know how do you
I mean,
The
I
word.
think is
the
it
word.
in some places, but not everywhere.
Because for me it was very strange when I was in the university, and it was like this snob thing that no, you cannot use music in the film because that put it like a sentimental thing, and that's not, or you cannot use the voiceover because this is like, and
These
then
different
I
dogmas.
yes, and then I
Yes.
saw my friends that loves Western, that love like John Ford and that, and they speak about that in such a emotional way. It was like, what is this? I can't use like a song in a movie. For me, the cinema becomes bigger when I found those people loving cinema and loving movies from all over the world without any prejudice, loving, I don't know, Straub and loving John Ford and loving Lucrecia Martel. For me, the cinema becomes like every day is endless.
Yeah.
And in the opposite of what is said right now, that cinema doesn't exist anymore, or that this is the time of the platforms and the series and not films. For me, it's like every day cinema becomes bigger. And that is related to this idea of getting close to cinema without the prejudice of, okay, this is documentary, this is fiction, this is a hybrid thing. So it is somehow like a way to play making films. I mean, we don't get any money by doing this. On the contrary, we lose money sometimes doing this. And for me, it's like mandatory to find a way to get related with movies and cinema in a way we can find somehow happiness or some kind of love. It's a kind of hippie thing, like saying like that.
You have a dogma of happiness and love. It sounds like. Yeah. Your
Somehow,
dogma. You insist on
It's not a
this.
bad
You
dogma.
absolutely insist on this happiness and love.
it's the dogma of playing, maybe.
Yeah.
Getting
Yeah,
together
and pleasure.
Discovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we have to think about a lot, and it's not so easy to be happy in a world like this. But
It's not the happiest film, Undefined Things, I wouldn't say.
yeah,
But I mean, there's such moments of beauty, and the songs, the music that you choose is really important. We talked a lot about that.
the songs, for me, it's really nice when someone mentioned that, because Miguel Sarabia, the musician, is a very unknown Argentine musician. He was from the 60s. You cannot find his song on Spotify, or some of them you can find it in YouTube, but it's not like a very popular musician.
Where was he from?
He was from Salta, which is a province, a city from the north of Argentina. That's why it is so important that there are filmmakers from all over the country, because it is such a different country. Santiago del Estero, Tucumán, Corrientes, Catamarca, those are places from the north of Argentina. I was thinking about something else related to what we were saying, that for me the last scene where she see Facundo and Milagros crossing
Yeah.
the streets, for me in that scene somehow there was this idea that cinema is like a big thing, because for me that scene can only exist because of cinema, because she knows Facundo and Milagros by editing this film, but of course they don't know anything about her. They don't know who she is. They actually don't know that this is happening right now. This crossing in the street. Of course, because they don't see her. But even though if they see her, they wouldn't understand what is happening there, because only Eva knows them by this film she was editing. for me, that little miracle that happened in the streets with all the noise and the cars and the people walking around, for me that was a special thing to think, because it was like this idea that the generosity of cinema, in this to the feeling of being part of something.
Yeah, it's like a magical moment. It's like a glimpse of magic that she has. But we actually talked about that, and we were talking about that precisely when we were talking about the multiple hybridities in the film, and how we can put this in two ways. On the one hand, of course, it's a lot of people related to the labor of editing. Like, these people are no longer, they said, ghosts from the past or from the archive, but they become part of the editor's life. They are alive in her life, even though she's not in theirs, right?
Yeah. There's
But we can also
asymmetry. There's an anonymity of the editor.
But we can put it in another way, which is how fiction is part of life.
Yeah,
Like, I feel in your film, there's very much this question that fiction is not something you construct in life. It's actually part of life. It's part of how life unfolds. And so these moments, which is, for me at least, a bit symmetrical, or a rhyme, not symmetrical, but it is a rhyme with the dreaming the dream of Facundo. These are two moments where you're actually bringing that question, like, how much can we be alive if we don't have fiction? Like, fiction is, it's in the matter of being alive.
Yes, of course. Actually, when I made my first movie, for me to think in a fictional movie was like a very strange thing. For me, it was like so far away from my possibilities to think on a script, a traditional script, or actors, and that's why we made this movie in a small town from Argentina, with like recreating something that has passed in that town some years ago with the people of that town. So it was somehow a fiction, but with a lot of documentary. Again, this thing about hybrid thing. For me, in that moment, it was this idea of introducing like some fictional thing into reality. And then for me is that the fiction is in the reality, The other movies were like the opposite thing, to think that the fiction is already there. We don't have to maybe create something. Sorry, I am mixing things. It's not like going
Appropriately,
there.
though. That's the right idea.
Yeah. It is part of the discussion. But yeah, that is something that I relate a lot with Borges, the Argentinian writer. Is most of the things he said and the way he found to build fiction and to have this complex thing in which things are inside another thing and another thing and another thing, and this strange connection that happened in real life. That is so close to the idea of fiction.
This would be a much better substitute for the word hybridity if people just said Borgesian. I think like that. That would work. I think probably
Completely.
pretty well.
Really, yeah. And sometimes Borges was accused in other periods of Argentinian history, was accused of a writer, of a conservative writer, or it was accused also of like a escritor de derechas.
The right-wing writer.
Of course, there are like political things there that can be discussed, of course, but I think that this ability of imagining and to think that the material of fiction is everywhere is one of the main thing on his writing. And I think that in cinema, there is like a movement there that for me is like very important, to maybe put some characters inside a context that is maybe these streets in where I live.
In this final scene and in this sort of miracle moment you described, you called it almost like a small miracle. Is there also a return to some sort of faith? Because the film explores a lot doubt, the grief, but also doubt of the practice, doubt of editing, doubt of the work that's being done. So I wanted to know a little bit, you're a fairly young filmmaker, does this doubt have origins in you, or does it have more origins in Eva and her experience? And is what we're talking about this sort of Borgesian interpenetration of the imaginary and the interior and the exterior. Is that somehow connected to the return of faith?
I mean, I'm not a religious person, but I sometimes think that cinema is very connected to faith and this religion gesture, like believing in something.
Because Eva has a crisis a little bit, right?
Yes,
In
of
the
course,
film.
yeah. And actually, I think that I had some kind of crisis with my previous movie that was about the clouds. For me, it was like impossible to get money, to do the film. I didn't want to make a film once again without having the chance to pay for the work of the people of my friend did. The first movie we did, no one gets any money for doing that. When we finished that first film, I decided that I wanted to make another one with the possibility of getting like better conditions for the working process. So there were like so many years in between. In a moment, I was like, okay, this is impossible to get money. We did like so many things. We sent the project to so many places with the funds and all the thing. This strange thing that happened in the fund system, that if you already had money, you can get more money, but if you don't have nothing, you cannot get.
Not a lot of risk taking really there.
Yeah, but in that moment for me, that made me think that the public funds are important, because are like a way to create a way that people from different backgrounds can have the chance to think that making a movie is possible. I think that Argentina cinema is so plural and so diverse, with so many filmmakers from all over the places and with so many different ways of production, and because of the generosity of the public funds. I have this feeling when I go to some other communities of filmmakers that most of the time filmmakers come from more common places. They are from
Privileged background.
Yeah, somehow that. And I realized that I feel really very honored to be from a country where filmmakers came from all over the places. Of course, I mean, we don't have so many poor filmmakers, that's true. But we have a lot of filmmakers that come from backgrounds that are not so related to, art backgrounds or the greatest university from all over the world, or whatever. There are, common people from working class families.
I love that from a question about faith, you end up talking about the material conditions to make a film. You're a Marxist, Maria.
Yeah. But that is
a Borgesian Marxist.
That is so important for me. Really.
Of course, I know. And it's related to faith also.
Yeah, because when you talk about the crisis that Eva had, I completely connected to that moment in which I thought, okay, this is impossible in a material way. If I want to pay for the work of all these people, that we don't have any money for doing that, the only way we can get money is to look for money to some other places, And when I realized that there was a limit there, I had this feeling, maybe all the people that make movies are people that have some facilities, I mean, the history of cinema is full of examples of people, filmmakers making movies in very extreme conditions, of course. But in a general thing, that was a big problem for me, because it extremely connected with the idea of why doing a movie, how,
of course,
why making a movie, and of course that is related to a very faithful thing. And somehow Undefined Thing was a movie that comes from this this question: what is the place for cinema in a moment that is so full of images and archives and sounds and moving images all over the place? The origin of this movie, aunque no lo crean, is that.
It's very interesting, because one of the things that we discussed is how much the idea of the question about the value of images is in your film. What makes an image valuable, and the relation of value with trust. again, the attitude, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
value of images is very much linked to an attitude of trust towards what images give you. I mean, we talked about that.
You have to decide on which you give value at first, always. Like the flowers, these flowers there in the selling place, it's just flowers with prices. But when she put there, and also when the director put there in a shot with the light, with the dark, now the flowers have a value. Now I trust that this is beautiful.
That question of the value was also very much related to mourning, to the grief of Eva, to grieving this friend and finding his hard drive.
Yes, it's very important that you mention the hard drive, because that scene actually becomes from something that happened because a friend of mine passed away. That is Pablo Baur, is a friend of us. Actually, the film is dedicated to him. He was a documentalist from Córdoba. He was one of the first filmmakers that I worked with. In a moment, I wanted to dedicate my life to edit, I wanted to be like an editor. And the first movie I edited was a movie that Pablo did, this friend of mine. And I was very young when I worked with him, and we became like great big friends. And well, he suddenly passed away. So we were editing a short film, actually, as Eva says in the movie, and I had his hard drive in my house. And when he died, that was what made me think that the question about images and about archives and about digital technology somehow was connected with the idea of that, because I had that hard drive and I had this feeling that inside this hard drive there were like so many important files for the people that know Pablo, because there were material of the short film, but also another archives of him, of his personal life. And having this feeling of holding the hard drive in my hand and thinking, okay, but this doesn't exist. This is like a plastic thing with electronic thing inside, and this file only exists if I plug this hard drive into a computer. I mean, what I thought is that it is like an existential discussion.
It's metaphysical.
Yeah. So as when someone passed away, the body is no longer there. Maybe we can think that there is also related to analog and digital technology. We can think on the body as that, like that, the soporte, the place where we live, the instrument that we use to live, to exist somehow. I don't know if you heard Jean Renoir talking about his father, the Auguste Renoir, the famous painter, the Impressionist painter. Jean Renoir talking about his father, he said that for the Impressionists, it was important the technology of the tubes of paint, los tubos de pintura. Before the paint tubes, paint only can be transported in some cages that were not so easily to move. So the tube paints allow painters to go outside
like
and paint, right?
Yeah.
So I think that I had the chance to study cinema in a moment in which digital technology became like a normal thing. It was common that in the group of people that you work with in the university, one of them had a digital camera or maybe had a computer. So fascinating to think that maybe I had the chance to make movies because of that, because digital technology. And now I am a teacher here in Córdoba of filmmaking, and I always told my students that never in the history of cinema a film student had so many tools around, like cameras and computers and cell phones, and the possibility of having your own archive in your cell phone, and editing and filming and having this quality in the image. But I think there is something there. For the Impressionists, it was like the chance to go outside and paint, and now that is not happening. Film students are not going out to film. they are going inside of them and going crazy. You know, so somehow is like more confusing to have this abundance of tools.
And I mean, in your film, there's a little bit of reflection on that. To the question of imagination, imagination with attention on the singular, and the imagination being a practice and not some sort of intellectual trigger button that you plug in and out and you decide, but actually imagination linked to feeling and to actually relate to how you relate to images and how you relate to the world, and how that allows you to expand into a way of feeling the world that can be shared, but not losing the singularity, right? Like not
Yes,
transforming everything into a sort of categorization of the world that stops you from connecting.
that could be a good definition of cinema. You
In a
know,
way,
something.
but it should be a definition of how to live more or less.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
all there in that final scene too. I mean, I think that's what's so brilliant
Yeah.
about that moment is it does capture the experience of both kind of connection and distance at the same time of both the confronting one's like imagination of an interiority while also like having access to something special at this. There's a mixture there of inside and out that is
Yes,
that really does
yes,
feel like it's so illustrates the best scenario of what we might take from it.
yes. Actually, I have a class when I talk about this to the students. You know, this question between the world that is outside us and the world that is inside of us is like the key for what a filmmaker is. How do you manage that relation? But I think that movies are somehow like gadgets or little things that help us deal with that relation.
Yeah. I
The
actually have
relation.
a really good example of that. I will quote a person from the Cine Club because they
Okay.
were talking about, it was Ken, and Ken was talking about we were talking about flowers, okay? And there was a conversation about, of course, the flowers carrying the cycle of life and death in them.
Yes.
And so we were talking about what the flowers were doing to our perception of the film. And then Ken talks about the moment when Milagros is talking about her memories of different things.
One of the things that struck me was when the young woman who's blind spoke about all of her memories of different things that she smelled and how she connected that all with her mother.
All right.
And so to me, that transformed the image of the flower for the rest of the movie.
The memories of Milagros transformed the image of the flowers. And it's an interesting thing about this movie. There's like a polysemic set of allusions that alludes to other senses also. So whatever odors might have been on the scene when you shot it, those are lost, but they can still be alluded somehow.
Like the smells, you mean?
The smells, he's talking about smells, but it could be colors, it could be temperature. But basically, he's talking about the impermanence and the permanence of things, precisely on that relation between interior and exterior, between how you perceive and experiment things yourself, and then how you actually create through imagination and other technologies, you create a way of existing, of sharing something within the world that is actually valuable. But it's always through attention and imagination. There's no other way,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And that I find quite astonishing, I must say. How, for example, such a simple element like the way you use the flowers in the film, or the way you use the dreams, for example, it allows the spectator to get into this reflection about what you were saying, like how can I respect my inner world and the outer world and find something that links without turning into myself. Ignacio Agüero, in the conversation that we released with him, he was always talking about the link, like building the link towards the other.
Well, when you mentioned Milagros, for me was something very important for the movie when we found out that for many of the blind people that we talked to when we made this conversation for the films, we realized that in many cases there was like an emotional connection their blindness, it was like an emotional origin, because Milagros, she have like a very small percent of view in one eye. She could see very little, and when her mother passed away, some years later, she completely lost her ability of view, of watching. Actually, the idea of death and the idea of the people that are no longer there, or these strong memories about something that is not there, or the absence in general, it was not something that we were looking for when we talked to them. It naturally appears, That was the first thing we filmed were those conversations with the
Okay,
blind
so
people.
you first shot the conversations and then,
Yes.
but you
And
had
then
already written the script, or
yes, because we made like a very long investigation. Maybe it's like a kind of formal to say it. When we were in the pandemic, we started to get connected with some schools here in Córdoba that work with blind young people, like for adapting themselves to life without watching. We made like some connection with these schools, and we made some conversation with the people of these schools. For us was like difficult to explain the movie that we were trying to do. A movie about a woman that edits film, and the movie that she's editing is about the blind people. And we speak with many of these institutions, and only one of them give us the chance to talk with their students. They organized like a virtual conversation with Facundo, the one that is in the movie. First connection we had with was online. It was by Zoom in the pandemic. With that conversation, we somehow write down like kind of a script. And then when the pandemic already passed, we talked to some other blind people, and then we finally decided to record the final in a recording studio. But that took 1 year. It was like the first thing we recorded.
okay.
With those previous conversations, we already wrote some of the fictional scenes of the Eva and Rami story.
Okay, so you started writing the fictional scenes of Evan Ramiro based on the conversations, or inspired by the conversations that you had with.
Yes, this is a kind of difficult to explain. The movie for me appears when I thought about Eva and Rami, when I thought about these two fictional characters.
Okay.
Before that, I had these ideas of making a movie about digital technology and that, but I couldn't find a way to make a movie about that. And when I thought, what happened if this movie should be a fictional film? If this is not only like a documentary or an investigation about digital technology or the transition between analog and digital. When I thought, okay, if this should be a fiction, how can this movie be? Right? So I thought in this woman that dedicates her life to work with images, and probably she had like 50 years, so maybe she lived the transition between analog and technology. So when I thought about that character and this idea of portrait the editing process of a film, and this relation she had with her friend that is also his assistant, this relationship between the like master and
The pupil.
yeah,
And so the idea of the blind people.
appears when I thought, okay, we will film a character that works editing movies. What movie are they working on in the film? So there, I thought, okay, if this is a movie about images and digital technology and blah, 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 what happens if we go totally on the opposite? The idea of no image. How is life without images at all? Que nace sin ver. That
Was born without seeing.
yes. So when we talk to them, to the blind people, we realize that in spite of living in a world without images, they cannot see, but they live in a world that is completely built around visual thing. So they all the time talk about visual thing.
I love the use of this black leader
Yeah.
of the 16 millimeter film to sort of illustrate that the void that they're describing, or the absence, because it's not an absence, it's not an image, but it provokes so much, and that there's texture and shadows and the chance for projection somehow.
But actually, in a more literal way, for example, when Facundo speak to us about the dream he had of his uncle or his aunt, I don't know, she told us, okay, so I was sleeping, dreaming, and then I woke up and I didn't know if I was where I was. Then I opened the window and I watched the garden of my house. So I realized that I was in my house and there was the trees and the noise. So even though he's not watching, he speaks using visual terms, words, ideas, That was like a discovery for us. There is another thing about the idea of making this movie with the blind people that is related to one film from Johan van der Keuken, The Blind Kind, I think it is called. It's
the short film with the kid.
Yeah, with the kid. That was a very important film for me. That actually the one that showed me that film was Pablo, this friend of mine that passed away. And also it was a film that I saw again in Roger Cossack, the classes. He used that film too. And for me, that film, in the end, the very last things that the movie voice over in that film, it says that in a movie everything is form. O sea, en una película todo es forma. Herman is forma. Herman es forma. Herman is the protagonist.
The little kid.
The little kid. And then he say, okay, hasta pronto, bella forma. That's the last thing that said. See you soon, beautiful thing. I don't know.
So I will translate that. So he says in the film, everything is form. Herman is form.
Is form.
See you soon, beautiful form or shape.
Yeah. Those are the last words in Van der Keuken film. So that was somehow safe inside me when I saw that film. And in the end, and this is just to finish this answer, I like this idea that maybe a movie can be like una excusa, like
an excuse
to go into something that you don't know, right? Or maybe something that you would like to be related with, but you don't know how. So I thought that it would be so interesting to speak with these people, to the blind people. In the end, I think that was like the main thing.
But it's very funny, Maria, because you depart from an idea of making a film about digital technology. But actually, your film, to be honest, it could have been done, 30 years ago about film in a way, because it's about
sort
cinema. So it's it's kind of anachronic in the best of senses. Okay, it's like kind of refusing to be in the present. Your film, it's kind of fighting with the present, relating to time in a more complex way, I feel.
Yeah, maybe I have to find a way to keep on insisting of how to think digital technology and to find a way.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not there. I'm not saying it's not there, because of course when you talk about value and when you talk about so many things, it's there. But what I'm saying is that if it's okay, so it's there, but it's there much more through these questions of impermanence and transposition of value and then per se the nature of digital, of what digital did to film or whatever, which is much more interesting because it's
go far beyond the sort of media encapsulation. Yes, or the history. I don't know, maybe that's a good place to end. We arrived at the process. And to get there, we came through many different possibilities. But I wonder, so we have finished some of these conversations by asking for a sound to leave the audience with, just something for them to listen to as they think about some of the ideas that came up in this conversation. Okay. It could be this quote that you just said, but maybe you have some other idea.
A sound in general, or not
whatever
only music,
you want.
whatever. Wow.
We had many different sounds already.
I have so many ideas. I have to choose one. Maybe it could be this. Because I was thinking about, I don't know if you remember the fragment in the first sequence of the editing room. They hear a voiceover, that is recorded, that comes from a text from Helen Keller.
It's a wonderful moment. Yeah.
It's a text where she describes that moment in which she goes there and she realized that the trees are not longer there because she feels like the air and she smells the wood. She feels also the noise of the trees falling in the ground. She feels like the vibration of that. There is a very beautiful book that is called The World Where I Live In, that is from Helen Keller, El Mundo en el que Vivo. I think the translation is The World Where I Lived, where she describes the relation she has with the world through these other sense, touch, smell, and taste. I thought on that image, Helen Keller on that park, looking at that place. Maybe we could find a sound like a forest without trees. I don't know. But I imagine Helen Keller on that situation, and it's like somehow way to thank her, right? For what she did for me. Reading that book was very important for this film. We will recreate Helen Keller in that park, in that forest, but in a park in Córdoba in 2025.
That sounds beautiful.
Beautiful. And we leave the podcast imagining Helen Keller there.
You have been listening to Artistic Differences. We want to say thank you on behalf of our whole team. That's Cynthia Gill, Christopher Allen, and I'm Jenny Miller. Thank you, of course, to our featured filmmaker this month and to our wonderful editor, Allison Rogers. Thank you to Andre Simoish for the music you heard in today's episode, and much gratitude to all of the members of our Cine Club that meets the first Saturday of every month. We encourage you to sign up for the next one at uniondocs.org/artistic-differences. And a small reminder that you can watch the film that we've been discussing in today's episode over on our membership hub. It's membership.uniondocs.org. Okay, I think that's it. Hope to see you soon, and thank you for listening. Bye.